I wrote this story on my own. It was my first, so it lacks some finesse. This was also entirely voiced by me. Uh, it's for entertainment purposes only. So I present to you a short story named The Blackjack. The small, dimly lit room held a fairly short wooden table. I sat on an iron chair. On my left was the dealer, also acting as a judge sent from the organizers. And across from me was my opponent in the decisive game. This person I had been very keen of since the beginning of the tournament. A man contoured by a uniquely small frame, enveloped in a loose black hoodie, early 30s from what I could tell. He's the leader of Legion, an infamous underground organization. This I know from my own sources, though it doesn't take much to know who he is if you're a regular dweller of the underground. He goes by the name of Michael, which I thought wasn't too fitting of a name for a known criminal, a bit lame actually. He's always wearing that grinning X-side neon mask, which I feel gives him an unfair advantage in a card game such as Blackjack. Every loser in the tournament will be killed, so he didn't have the excuse of needing to preserve his identity. The only reason he would wear such a mask would be because he wasn't confident enough in his ability to keep an expressionless face. In this manner, I regard him as a coward. Before the present moment, he had lost against me in an 8-person free-for-all in the second round of the tournament, one round before the semifinals. He had been in the last remaining 3 that time, until when he made a big mistake, bluffing and going all in with a mediocre hand, an opportunity which the other remaining players took, which I of course won against afterwards, making him lose on the spot and go into the loser bracket. At the beginning of the first match, you are given a sum of money. If you win, you get to keep the money and your gains until the next round, and so on. A loss at any point will mean you are put on the loser bracket, in which your currency are fingers. If you lose another match, which would of course mean all your fingers are cut, you get shot on the spot. The fact that Michael has all of his fingers at the moment after battling throughout the whole loser bracket does show that he is either a great cheater. It doesn't matter if the dealer notices here, the only ones you have to fool are the players, or he could also be plenty lucky. For skill alone won't win you this perfectly. I have $240 million accumulated, while each of his hands' fingers costs 20 million each. I have an advantage of 40 million, which is very considerable, besides the fact that him losing a finger of 2 would mean an overwhelming advantage for me, for no one can be perfectly sane when in great pain. The cards were dealt one symbol side down, one symbol side up, as usual. Any further cards that you will ask for will be symbol side up. The only card that the other participant can see is the first card you get. My face up card was a 7, and my face down card the 5, which was fairly convenient since the only card that would break my hand, make me go over 21, was a 10. Unless my opponent made a dumb choice, I would always draw another card in such a case. I looked at my opponent, he had a 9. I was assigned the first to make a choice. I had 2 options: to raise the bet, the ante was 20 million, one finger from his perspective, or to draw. I can also raise just after I draw. I, of course, decided to draw another, and I had been given a 4. Which made my hand become 16 out of 21. This wasn't such a great hand, but I would stay for now, for I could always draw again after his turn. He also drew a card. It was a 3, making it a 12 plus X out of 21, since I didn't know that card. I couldn't figure anything from his reaction. He then raised to 2 of his fingers, 40 million. I accepted the raise and stayed. I figured he wouldn't have had drawn if his hand was already above 15, figuring it to have been around 12-15, which meant that with the 3 that he was given, he was likely along the 15-18 range. Cards were revealed. His hidden card was a 7, making it 19 out of 21. He had won this round, though this game helped me confirm that he was fairly reckless. I wouldn't have drawn at 16, especially with a finger at play, and that he was probably trying to intimidate me into folding in the future. I didn't disconsider the possibility of cheating, though since he was the only person I had been paying attention to since we entered the room, I felt confident that I would be able to spot dirty play. He was the one that theoretically had 240 million now, me being at a disadvantage with 200 million, but I wasn't worried, for I wasn't afraid of this person. The next round started. I was given a 9 face down and a 5. He was given an 8 face up. It was his turn to start. He drew a card, a 2, then another, a 7. He didn't raise. So it was a 17 and a random card out of 21. The fact that he didn't raise made me think that there was a possibility of him having gotten over, but most likely he wanted to see what I would do first. 14 out of 21 is a bad situation. I thought a little, before deciding that I really had not much of a chance to win on such a hand, and since I was counting cards and the next card was likely to be smaller rather than bigger, I drew. It was a 4, which didn't give me too much confidence, though 18 out of 21 is fairly good. I decided not to raise, and he also stayed. The cards were revealed. He busted with a 22. He decided to go on 17 and had unluckily gotten a 5. I searched for despair in his reaction, for he had to part ways with a finger, but he didn't react. At this point I was hit by a wave of pity for him, for I knew he felt like he had to keep his facade even now. If only he would show me a little of what's under that mask of his, to be truthful to himself for just a moment. I am Jack Daggett, better known as the Blackjack in the world of gambling. I always consider Blackjack to be a fairly stupid game. Even as I won mountains of money from it, I always consider it mostly luck-based. Of course I have tried many other card games, and I found great success in all of them, but while at poker I sometimes found myself losing once in a blue moon, I have never lost a match of Blackjack. Even in situations I looked like I was losing, I always managed to come back somehow, and so I stuck with it. Maybe I am especially good at deciphering people's thoughts. Maybe I'm always able to make the most rational decisions, or maybe I'm just lucky. Whatever the case is, I've gotten good. Even though today is only my 31st birthday, and I have anything I could wish for, I participated in this tournament for the slim chance I might lose and die, for I have never had the courage to end it all myself. Sad thinking of my own manners, I saw the familiar expression of a man broken by pain right in front of me. It wasn't an uncommon sight in this kind of business, but it still always felt especially somber when I caused it. So I watched him as he suffered in pain, while still always wearing the same mask, for he couldn't even know what he looked under it, even if he took it off. He paced and flayed around the room, trying to conceal his anguish. I had to wait a while his wound was treated, and since he had blooded some cards, a new deck was brought, so there was no room for marking on or anything of the sort. He was again in front of me. I could feel his anger at me radiating through his mask, his unarmed hand clawing at the table. The cards were distributed again. I had an ace face down. You can choose whether the ace takes the value of 1 or 11, and an 8. A 19 was exactly what I needed in this situation. Since he was just recently wounded, I decided to raise the bet to 120 million. I knew he would accept it, because he thought that I was doing it only to intimidate him. It really was a great time to get a 19. He accepted the raise. I could see he had a 3, he then drew an 8, then a 7. 18 plus X out of 21. I was fairly sure he had burned himself. He would need an ace, a 2 or a 3. No. I was actually sure he had lost. Usually card decks have the same pattern on all cards, but there are times where the patterns are slightly different from card to card. But since they look like gibberish, no one would be able to distinguish a card from another, even with an extremely good memory. However, I have so much experience that I am able to tell sometimes on specific decks. The face down card that my opponent has the pattern of either a 5 or 9. I can't really distinguish well between them, but both of them will lose for him in this scenario. He spent a long time looking down at the cards he had. He raised the bet, going all in. Since we both had 220 million now, it would be all in for both of us. Just like a cornered dog, he tries to bare his fangs. What a pathetic existence. His pride wouldn't accept losing 6 fingers, so he has to suicide instead. He thinks he's threatening me who can so clearly see through him, the autistic nihilist, to think I even had the thought to talk to the administration to pay the price in full of the event for his meager life. If that is what he wants, that is what he shall receive. I accepted the race, and even now he shows no expression, just like a lifeless doll to be thrown away in the winds of fate. Look at the cards, Jack. He tells me in a bored tone. I look at my cards. 19, then look at his. 20. I look at him in shock. Right after I cut my finger off in the second round, I shoved all the cards on the ground. All except a 2 that I slid inside the wrist of my hoodie. I slid that 2 under the card that you correctly identified as being a 9, while I looked at it so that you would think I am making a suicidal move when I am in fact winning. I lost in that second round of the tournament to imprint in your mind that the fact that I am reckless. Same was for the finger that I lost. That was on purpose, of course. And although it hurt, it was the only plan that came up to me on the spot. So now you understand. It was not me who you saw when you looked at my mask. It was yourself. I only fed your perception. I entered this tournament because I needed the money for Legion. You only did it out of your desire to die. We are very different, yes. He says as he takes the gun from the dealer. I don't gamble. I would never enter a gamble if I wasn't sure I was going to win it. Without being able to respond, I fall to the ground, shot, not knowing where, not caring to know, yearning to live a couple more seconds until the blood runs out of my veins.